bells of King's Landing tolled the hour of vespers, each bronze peal diffusing through a sky mottled with rose-gold dusk. Along the cobbled alleys of Flea Bottom the fading light revealed the usual squalor. Slop buckets upended, rats scurrying, smoke curling from cook fires that smelled of burnt onions and old eel. Yet on this particular evening, a hush had settled, as if even the fleas were anxious. The High Septon, newly chosen, draped in moon-white robes spun of humble wool, had sent barefoot acolytes scurrying through every ward of the city, summoning rich and poor alike to the great sept of Baelor. No explanation, only an edict. The Father has whispered, the sun shall rise, and the kingdom must bear witness. Gendry Waters stood at the forge of Tabomat, sleeves rolled to knotted elbows, the mallet poised above an unshaped half-helm that glowed cherry red upon the anvil. Hot sparks hissed when they kissed the cool stone floor. He did not notice the hush, nor had he ever possessed the leisure to listen for it. Each day since King Robert's death had been much like the last, sweat, steel, and the thunder of his heart as he worked. The calluses on his palms were twin maps of his life's only certainty. Yet he felt the prickling of unseen eyes. Turning, he found a pair of septas in rough spun at the workshop's archway. "Gendry," said the elder in a voice that quavered like old vellum. "You are bid to the great sept. At once." Tabomat snorted, wiping grease from his brow. "The lad is paid by the hour, and the hour's not done." "The hour," the septa answered, "belongs to the seven." And then, fixing Gendry with a stare both pitying and reverent, "And to you, if the Father's will proves true." Bewilderment tugged at Gendry's mouth. Father? His father had been a secret long gone with Lord Eddard Stark's-head. He set the mallet down, the sound echoing like a closing gate. The High Septon's dais loomed beneath Baelor's towering statue, its marble feet lit by 1,000 candles that waxed small beneath the vaulting dome. Nobles packed the front pews, Mace Tyrell flat-cheeked and sweating under embroidered roses, Lord Paxter Redwine smelling of the arbor's best summer wine, a scattering of minor lords hungry for rumor. Behind them clustered hedge knights, tradesmen, potboys, slatterns, and ragged orphans in equal disorder. The faith militant held every pillar, 7-pointed stars shining upon steel gorgets. Their crystal-studded axes formed an avenue from the nave to the altar. Cersei Lannister was conspicuous in her absence. Rumor had it she brooded in Maegor's holdfast, hurling goblets at any servant rash enough to speak of sparrows or sex. The Iron Throne itself, too, remained empty, guarded only by a silent Kingsguard of one, the stooped Sir Boros Blount, whose jowls quivered at every footfall. Into that colossal hush walked Gendry. His eyes drank the light, his breath thick as forge smoke. The twin doors slammed shut with a finality that made ravens stir on the high rafters. Somewhere in the press a woman whispered, "He looks like Robert." The High Septon raised both ringless hands, palms outward, demanding quiet though none dared speak. His voice, when it came, was neither frail nor strident, but possessed of a resonance that folded the crowd upon itself. "Children of the Seven," he intoned, "the stranger walks among us. He snatches kings and small folk alike, and the realm trembles. Yet the Seven are merciful. The Father has opened his book, and his quill has traced a name. And now," torchlight flickered upon the High Septon's features. Pock skin, eyes like storm glass, a mouth set in prophetic certainty. "Gendry Waters," he said, "step forward." Gendry's boots felt of molten lead, but he obeyed. At the base of the marble steps he knelt, an instinct born of subservience, not piety. The High Septon descended 2 steps, no more than tradition allowed, and with a small silver hammer he struck the anvil bell kept solely for coronations long denied these halls. A single chime rang, thin but unbroken. "By decree of the faith," the High Septon proclaimed, voice swelling through the vault, "we name you Gendry of House Baratheon, born of King Robert I, rightful heir to the Stormlands and to the Iron Throne beyond, chosen by the Father's judgment. Rise, Gendry Baratheon, and stand tall in the Mother's light." A gasp tore the congregation apart. Some knelt, some clawed at sigils on their doublets, as if seeking ancestral guidance. Others spat Stad's shadow, the old sailor's curse. But most stared in awed silence. Gendry did not rise at once. Images flickered behind his eyes, a fat king in hunting leathers laughing at his own jest, a blacksmith's fire that never warmed his soul. Arya Stark's fierce grin beneath a boy's ragged cap, leeches swelling with bastard's blood upon a wooden table. When he finally stood, his legs steadied, shoulders straightened, and a hush thicker than forge smoke engulfed the sept. He resembled Robert in youth, broad-shouldered, black-haired, eyes the blue of a summer sky before a southern storm. The likeness frightened the old lords, seduced the small folk, and filled the nights with a hunger for the songs their fathers once sang. Songs of stag antlers, backlit by dawn over the trident. The High Septon held aloft an ancient circlet of beaten iron, rusted at the seams yet holy for having graced Baelor, the blessed in dreams of peace. He placed it upon Gendry's brow. Iron clashed against sweat-dark curls, and the crowd exhaled as one. "Behold the King of the Seven Kingdoms, crowned by faith," the High Septon declared. "Let any who would contest his claim stand forth now and meet the warrior's judgment." Only the echo replied. Word moved faster than ravens that evening. In the Red Keep, grand salons were locked, gates barred, and whispers clung to every banister. Pycelle, stooped yet still sinewy, begged Queen Cersei for counsel. Qyburn, ever curious, sought permission to test the boundaries of necromancy upon this newfound Baratheon. Cersei paced her solar like a caged lioness, emerald eyes flaring at every mention of the bastard crowned. She had long ago set wildfire to every shred of legitimacy left in King Tommen's shadow. Now the faith had kindled a new blaze she could not extinguish with coin nor crown. Ser Jaime was gone to River Run to treat with Brynden Tully. Kevan Lannister lay cold beneath marble after Varys' crossbow bolt. Her power, once a golden tower, had become brittle as stale bread. She summoned Sir Gregor Clegane, the towering abomination in bruised plate, and ordered him to stand vigil at her son's chamber. The boy was naught but a pawn now, yet he was hers, and the last rope binding her influence to the realm. Across the black water rush the Stormland's bannermen stirred. At Storm's End the aged Castellan, Sir Roland Storm, wept openly at the news. "The blood endures," he croaked, fingers pressed to driftwood crown embroidery. Ravens took wing laden with seals of the white-crowned stag to every march and keep, to House Swan of Stonehelm, House Dondarrion of Blackhaven, and even to the Marcher lords who had bent to Stannis before his end in the snow. Each message bore a single command: ride for King's Landing. The Trueborn's son reclaims what was taken. Yet Trueborn he was not, and that uncertainty thrummed beneath every hoofbeat. Some balked. Lord Caron feared Lannister gold. Lady Penrose feared Lannister blades. But others yearned for the days when Robert's laugh ruled the court, when the stag banner cracked like summer thunder. The faith's blessing gave these memories flesh. In the Riverlands a different reckoning brewed. The brotherhood without banners, still wandering stony fields littered with bleached bones of war no singer would memorialize, heard of a royal bastard raised to kingship, and laughed their ragged laughs. Thoros of Myr, rag-robed and wine-sodden, toasted the stranger king with sour ale. "Brother King," he called him, though Gendry had left their company seasons ago. The Hound, now half a myth himself, growled that bastards made worse kings than liars, then spat and kept walking. Even so, some hearts among the Brotherhood stirred with cautious hope. Within the great sept of Baelor, the candles dwindled. Gendry knelt alone before the warrior's statue, crown still upon his brow, as acolytes swept waxy puddles into tin pans. His mind raced like galloping destriers. "Indot," he called me king, but the word felt foreign, ill-fitting as silvered plate on a hedge knight. He preferred leather apron straps, the hiss of quench water, the honest sting of sweat. Footsteps echoed behind him. Soft. Sure. Sir Loras Tyrell emerged from shadow, face wax pale beneath a velvet hood. His beauty had once set maidens weeping and men cursing. but scars now crossed his cheek like jagged lightning. He wore simple green and gold, no cloak, no armor. "My lord," Loras said. "Don't call me that," Gendry muttered. "I was never lord of anything." "You are now, if the Seven speak true." Loras knelt a respectful distance away, though every sinew remained taut as a bowstring. "And many will question their voice. The High Septon is beloved by sparrows, but feared by lords. Yet faith can crown more swiftly than blood, and swords are ever eager to follow a cause, draped in holiness." Nenshawan. Gendry lifted his gaze to the ornamented ribs of the ceiling. "I never sought this. Neither did your father." Some crowns chase the head. Loras smiled bleakly. Others nail themselves to it. Outside, distant horns announced the arrival of Tyrell guardsmen at the Lion Gate, and the great sept vibrated with hooves upon stone. Mace Tyrell, it seemed, had weighed his options faster than most. Better a new stag on the throne than a lioness sharpening her claws. The Reach had fields to harvest and pride to keep. They would side with the grain that bent least in the wind, or with whomever promised morning dew unspoiled by wildfire ash. Loras touched a scar that bisected his lip. "If you would live, your grace, you must gather banners as fast as Mace gathers indulgences. The city will wake tomorrow in confusion. When it does, carve your claim in iron." Gendry swallowed. "The only iron I know goes in helmet bands and breastplates." "Then forge a kingdom as you would a helm," Loras said, standing. "Eat, dot. Emmer. Tiwinder. Quench, dot. Repeat." His footsteps faded into darkness as silently as they had come. The night released new tidings before heralds could. In the brothels of Silk Street, men argued over dice. The news slithered in like a viper, coiling about throats. Some lauded the faith's courage. Others cursed the sparrows for daring to crown a bastard. But coin flows where hope glimmers, and soon bawds promised royal bastard bed games for twice the usual price. Across Blackwater Bay, the Lysini fleet, that had come to sell pleasure barges, hoisted anchor, uneasy at talk of zealots wielding crowns. They preferred sin without sermons. At Dragonstone, the ancient castle crouched upon its smoking rock, Sir Davos Seaworth stared into a hearth's fading glow and whispered, "Another Baratheon, gods help us all." His last oath had been to King Stannis, whose bones lay in frozen soil. Yet the Onion Knight's heart bent toward broken boys who became men too soon, for he had been one. He sent a raven. "I would parley with the Smith King." On the wall, ravens from the south rarely mattered. Yet Maester Aemon's replacement, aged Maester Harmon, half-blind, puzzled over a scroll sealed with the High Septon's sigil. He read the decree aloud to a dwindling Night's Watch. Gendry of House Baratheon, born of King Robert. The Black brothers exchanged weary glances. Kings had little to offer men who guarded a realm that scarcely noticed their passing. But Tormund Giantsbane laughed. Crown or no crown, all kneel to the snow in the end. Morning saw small council convened in the Tower of the Hand. Cersei's chair sat at table's end like a blade in velvet. Grand Maester Pycelle wheezed, "We must nullify this. Sacrilege. The crown is Tommen's by law." "The law is steel," murmured Qyburn, eyes alight with clinical interest. "And steel bends under heat." Lord Giles Rosby coughed red phlegm into a silken square. "We might bring the boy, this Gendry, to court, promise him Storm's End if he renounces." A fresh cough cut short his scheme. Cersei slammed a jeweled goblet. "There will be no bartering with bastards." Wine splashed like spilled blood. "The faith has overstepped its reach, and I will see the High Septon stripped and paraded naked through the streets before his faith militant." Sir Kevin might once have counseled caution, but his seat remained empty. "Silence," answered Cersei, thick as bottled wildfire. "Sir Meryn," the Queen commanded, "summon the gold cloaks. Arrest the blacksmith by nightfall." But the gold cloaks, their loyalty pendulous in hungry times, had already surrounded the great sept. Ostensibly to keep order, yet, in truth, curious as to which side would line their purses heavier. Deep beneath the sept, within the vault where relics of silver and jade rested under dust-thickened glass, Gendry met with the High Septon once more. The old man's robes now smelt of lavender and lamp oil. He paced among the reliquaries like a shepherd counting sheep. "Why me?" Gendry asked. Echoes swallowed his voice, but the words retained their weight. The High Septon stopped before a reliquary. Inside lay what legend called Maegor's Contrition, a sculpted ruby heart said to bleed when kings sinned. The realm bleeds, child. The common folk know hunger, and hunger breeds wolves in men's skins. The nobles play their games while the poor bury infants without names. The seven showed me your face, lit by forge flame, crowned in iron, a king shaped by toil, not by maester's quills. I am still a bastard. So was Daemon Blackfire," said the High Septon, "and yet thousands died for his banner. Blood alone does not curb ambition. Faith tempers it." He placed a spotted hand upon Gendry's shoulder. "Accept this mantle, and the faith shall temper yours." Gendry examined the iron circlet in his hands, plain, sturdy, bearing nicks where past heads had sweated prayers. He imagined Robert's crown, heavy with stag horns, polished bright as sunrise. Different crowns for different kings, he mused. "I will need counsel," he said. "Knights who wield more than hammers." "You shall have them," promised the High Septon. "But remember, a crown sits easiest when shared by every soul it serves. Give the small folk bread before banners, justice before jousts." Now, in that dim reliquary Gendry made his first command: open the granaries. Feed the poorest streets at dawn. Tell them their king comes from their ranks. The High Septon smiled, a creaking of old parchment. So the wheel turns. As sunlight speared stained glass, rainbow shards danced upon the nave. The faith militant opened the grain stores of the Lion Gate. Small folk flocked, hands cupped, mouths gaping. Amid them Gendry stood clad not in silk but in smith's leather, sleeves rolled, hauling sacks upon broad shoulders. Loras Tyrell, armored now in subtle green plate lacking house sigils, kept watch by his side. Each sack he dropped into outstretched arms loosened the chokehold of doubt upon the crowd's throats. Children giggled as flour dusted their noses. Grandmothers traced seven-pointed stars across chests already thinner than sparrow bones. Across the plaza, a group of gold cloaks appeared, Captain Slint's son at their fore. Their spears glinted dull bronze. "By order of Queen Regent Cersei Lannister," the captain barked. "The man calling himself Gendry Baratheon is to accompany us to the Red Keep for questioning." 100 eyes turned. Gendry wiped sweat, approached the captain. "These people hunger," he said, voice low but carrying. "Question me here, if you must, while I work." The captain's jaw twitched. Commands had always sounded clear in his father's mouth. In his own they felt brittle. "My orders." "Men with orders," Loras interjected, stepping forward, "should consider whether they march behind coin or conscience. The faith militant protects this king." Bens. Helms shifted. Spears dipped. Uncertain. From surrounding alleys ragged sparrows emerged, armed with little but rusted clubs and righteous fury. Tension coiled tight as bowstring. The captain swallowed. "We will return with clarification." The gold cloaks withdrew to jeers, their banners limping like whipped dogs. In that moment the city watched crowns of gold and faith weigh themselves in the balance. News spread beyond city walls. In Old Town, archmaesters argued into the night. Could faith invest kingship? Was precedent moot when dragons had flown? Ravens burst from the high tower carrying coded disagreements that only dull maesters would parse. At Highgarden, Mace Tyrell convened his advisors. Lady Olenna, Queen of Thorns, pruned roses with murderous care. Better a blacksmith king than a Lannister brat under Cersei's skirts, she told her son. Yet best of all is a king beholden to the Reach's grain and gold. She dispatched riders to King's Landing bearing wagons of fresh bread and barrels of arbor red. From the small folks' hands to their new monarch's lips, with Tyrell banners fluttering above every morsel. In Dorne, Prince Doran listened to hot winds rattle the lattice shutters of Sunspear. "A bastard crowned by Septons," he murmured. "The game changes its rules." His daughter Ariane, restless as a desert lynx, proposed an embassy bearing sand steeds as gifts, a gesture of desert friendship. Doran nodded, though his gout-swollen fingers trembled. New kings could break old alliances but also forge unexpected bonds. Night returned. Slower this time, thick with expectation. In the forge Gendry once called home, embers glowed anew. Tabo Mott, practical as ever, bartered steel secrets for promises of Stormlander's silver. But Gendry sought something else. A hammer fit for a king. He worked beside his former master, melding blackened iron into a weapon that mirrored his own journey. Rue, unadorned, honest. On its flat he etched 7 tiny points in a ring, a nod to the faith that had raised him. As the blade edge cooled, Arya Stark's memory brushed his mind. Her grin, her list whispered by campfire. If she lived, what would she make of this twist? He wondered whether kings could ever row skiffs down quiet rivers with friends, or if rulership demanded the sacrifice of all simplicity. He bound leather about the handle and breathed the faint scent. Oak-tanned hide, oil, smoke. This will do. Elsewhere, within a cavernous chamber of the Red Keep, known as Maker's Holdfast, Cersei traced a map of Westeros, with crimson-tipped fingers. Every flick of her nail scored a new threat. Tyrell roses surrounding the crownlands, Dornish spears rising in the south, Stormland banners stirring like thunderheads in the east. Gendry's forged hammer, though yet unseen, felt poised above her skull. She summoned Qyburn. "If faith crowns a bastard," she hissed, "let faith fear the dark." She ordered the creation of a rumor, the High Septon consorting with shadows, dark magics revived beneath the sept. Let small folk love their new king. They would tremble if they saw demons in his coronation. Lies, she knew, could corrode loyalties faster than rebellion. Qyburn bowed, eyes glimmering. "A tale seated amidst the candles, my queen. It will spread like plague in summer. But truth has a habit of wielding its own steel." 3 days after the coronation, Gendry strode to the steps of the Red Keep. Not as prisoner but as claimant. An honor guard of faith militant flanked him. Shields painted with the 7-pointed star. Behind marched 200 Stormlander knights, who had arrived at dawn, having ridden through the night in dusty mail. Sir Ronnet Connington bore the stag banner. Sir Brian Caron carried the smith's hammer newly gilded upon a sable field. The iron portcullis remained raised, as though unsure whether to welcome or ward. Within the throne room, Gendry paused before the dais where twisted steel blades thirsted for memory. The Iron Throne glimmered like a frozen wave of razors. Tommen Baratheon, gentle, frightened, sat under the wary eye of Sir Gregor. Cersei lounged upon a step, lion green gown pooling like envy. The High Septon took a single pace forward. "Queen Regent, step aside. The father has chosen." Cersei laughed brittle. "The father chose Robert once, and he sired more bastards than boars in the Kingswood. Must we crown them all?" "Da." "The wheel turns upon but one spoke at a time," intoned the High Septon. Gendry faced Tommen. Boy of perhaps 10, crown too large upon flaxen curls. "I knew your sister Myrcella," he said quietly, remembering shy smiles in a forge that no longer stood. "You are but a child, and the realm bleeds under rival queens. Let me bear this weight." Tommen's lower lip trembled. All his young life had been puppeteer's strings. Varys, Marjorie, his mother. Now another tugged. A living image of the father he barely remembered, but broader, stronger, and unflinching. Cersei surged upright. "Monster," she spat. "You dare pity my son, Gregor?" The mountain took one thunderous step. Sword groaning from its sheath, but faith militant axes crossed the path, quick as arbalest bolts. The High Septon lifted a single palm, and remarkably, Sir Gregor stalled. perhaps confused by lack of direct slaughter, perhaps sensing an arena of different rules. Gendry's hammerhead tapped the floor, a metallic heartbeat. "There need be no war," he said. "Let the faith judge by trial of 70. If the 7 favor Tommen, I shall yield." "Men shall." Cersei's pupils shrank to pinpricks. Her gambits plotted in secret had not foreseen this modesty. Victory felt near, yet unreachable. She framed a smile sharp as broken glass. "Very well. 7 champions, divine judgment. My son's champion shall be the mountain that rides." Gasps rippled. The mountain loomed, grotesque. No man alive wished to face him. Many presumed him undead. Gendry, however, merely nodded. "Then I shall wield the smith's own hammer." Rumors later would claim the 7 statues overhead shook off centuries of dust at those words. That night, preparations murmured through the city. The dragon pit was chosen for the trial, its ruins bound to spectacle, memories of beasts that scorched sky. The faith militant stood sentinel. Small folk pitched tents upon charred stone, wagering copper stags on who might live. Tailors worked by lamplight to craft a proper tabard for the blacksmith king. Storms stag-rearing within a halo of the 7-pointed star. Gendry sought quiet upon the ramparts of the Red Keep, overlooking the Blackwater where moonlight silvered gentle waves. Loras Tyrell joined him, silent at first. Finally he murmured, "No man alive beats Clegane fairly." "I do not intend fairness," Gendry answered, eyes on distant stars. "I intend faith." He spoke not as zealot but as smith. Hammers strike where metal is weakest. He had watched the mountain fight once, at the hands tourney. Every blow brute force, no finesse. But brute force can stumble if guided by rage rather than reason. Gendry planned to exploit that. He sharpened strategy as he would a blade. Use reach, stay mobile, aim for the helm's visor where vision narrowed. As the night deepened, he visited the forge newly established behind the SCTT. He reheated his hammer's head, tempered it with oil that hissed like serpents, and etched 7 narrow grooves along the faces, channels to trap Clegane's sword, if fortune smiled. During this labor he whispered half prayers, half memories. Arya's quick feet, Brother Beric's burning sword, the feel of rowboat oars cutting Black River water. Each memory folded into iron. Dawn bled pale across the city, and bells summoned throngs to the dragon pit. The arena's crumbled tears overflowed with humanity. Highborn ladies shaded their faces with lemon water silk. Small folk perched atop walls like gulls on a cliff. Wine casks rolled, pies steamed, and rumor flapped louder than gulls. Some swore a miracle would occur, and the 7 themselves would stride forth. Others muttered that Crakehall soldiers had been bribed to rig the outcome. No one truly cared so long as blood-spattered stone and fate turned on a visible hinge. Within the pit's center stood 7 pillars, each carved from dragon bone. Atop each flickered a lantern, the 7 aspects, judging. Sir Gregor arrived clad in armor black as plate glass, helm shaped like a snarling dog grown monstrous. In his fist rested a great sword that seemed half again a normal blade's width. Sparks flew when he dragged it, careless of edge. Gendry entered opposite, bare-armed save for boiled leather, iron hammer in hand. Upon his chest, the crowned stag blazed white against charcoal. Simple, bold. His crown he had left in the sept. A smith needs no gilded circlet in battle. Loras Tyrell and 6 sworn brothers of the faith took their places behind him. Opposite stood the mountain's 6 companions, cell swords whose faces blurred beneath helms to hide fear. The crowd buzzed. High Septon raised a crystal scepter. Under the warrior's gaze and the father's judgment, 7 defend truth. 7 challenge. Let the gods decide. He struck stone thrice. The hammer chime echoed destiny. Battle erupted. Sir Gregor lunged, sword cleaving wind. Gendry sidestepped, hammer arcing to clip segmented elbow joint. Armor dented. Mountain snarled, riposted, sword crashing upon Gendry's raised haft. Wood splintered but held. Sparks dazzled watchers. Faith militant brothers engaged cell swords. Steel rang, prayers shouted. Blood sprayed. Clegane's bulk dominated. Yet each time he pressed, Gendry slipped aside. Smith's muscles honed by hours of hefting ingots more unyielding than men. He swung low, aimed for knee, found Grieve. The mountain staggered, but momentum turned into backhand slash that scythed empty air where Gendry had been. Blades clashed elsewhere. Loras Tyrell danced with grace regained, parrying two foes at once despite scars. Marble dust rose as feet churned. Sweat blurred Gendry's eyes. Clegane's sword hammered his shoulder, leather splitting. Flesh bruising deep. Pain streaked, but he countered with an upward sweep that jammed between the mountain's gauntlet plates. The etched grooves caught steel. With a twist he wrenched the greatsword sideways. Clegane roared, a sound like boulders grinding. For a breath he overextended, and Gendry drove his hammerhead into the visor slit. A sickening crunch, wet and final. The mountain's knees hit ground, two heavy thuds. He groped, blade clattering. Gendry stepped back, chest heaving. Blood dripped from the hammer grooves. Silence engulfed the pit, save for crackle of lanterns. Sellswords froze. Faith brothers stilled. Loras Tyrell disarmed his foe, then stood, sword point down, awaiting verdict. Clegane's helm tipped, revealing eyes gone glassy. A final breath rattled like wind through broken shutters. The beast lay dead. Cheers erupted like a tidal wave, cresting the tears, washing away doubt. Small folk chanted, "Hammer King, Hammer King." Nobles exchanged guarded looks, new allegiances scribbling themselves. Somewhere a bard began strumming half-written verses. The High Septon's voice carried, calm and inevitable. Justice is served. The warrior favors Gendry Baratheon. By the Seven's divine will, he is king. That evening, the great Sept's crystal windows glowed bright as a field of harvested stars. Gendry stood before them, crowned again. Cloak of storm gray pinned by a stag, brooch Loras had loaned. Around him thrummed an energy like hot metal ready to be shaped. Lords knelt. The Tyrells, the Swans, the Estermonts, even sullen bannermen from the Crownlands weary of Lannister rule. The Dornish envoy arrived late, sand silk fluttering, bearing pepperwine and promise. Cersei, furious yet caged, retreated to Casterly Rock with what remained of her household. Tommen she carried with her, though rumor claimed the boy wept to leave Sir Pounce behind. The lion's roar dimmed into a growl behind western gates. Gendry's first decree, signed with Caliused hand, ordered relief trains to Riverland's villages, still starving from war. His second named Sir Davos Seaworth, Hand of the King, an honest smuggler who understood hunger's tyranny. His third freed Arya Stark's name from traitor's rolls, though he knew not whether she lived. And beneath each decree he stamped a new sigil, a smith's hammer crossing a stag's antlers, encircled by 7 stars. Winter yet gathered in the north, beyond mortal making. White ravens would soon mark its arrival. But for a fleeting season in the south, hammers rang not for war's forge, but for rebuilding gates, mending roofs, and crafting new plowshares destined for fields reborn. And within the great sept of Baelor, candlelight danced upon iron crown and honest brow, illuminating a king both bastard and blessed, whose reign had been wrought in the crucible of faith and steel, and whose story, though newly begun, already echoed through the marrow of the realm, like the ringing of a sacred hammer striking unyielding stone. Morning light glazed the city in a thin saffron wash that smelled of baking bread and river silt. And for the first time in a generation, the bells of King's Landing rang not for war, mourning, or royal marriage, but for open council. Small folk drifted toward the Red Keep as if pulled by a tide, eager to learn if this Smith King would address them from the ramparts, or vanish behind the same iron gates that had swallowed every monarch before him. Under the watch of faith militant sentries and Stormlander men-at-arms, the drawbridge lowered, and a hush fell over the crowd when Gendry Baratheon emerged upon Aegon's high hill, wearing plain leather half-armor polished to a subdued gloss. The iron circlet rested on sweat-dark curls, its uncomplicated workmanship, a wordless promise that grandeur would no longer strangle duty. He raised one hand, palms still bearing the tiny burns that blacksmiths wear like rings. And the clamor stilled to a brittle silence. He spoke without flourish, each sentence hammered into shape by sincerity rather than rhetoric. The realm would feed its children before filling the larders of lords. Grain levies on the reach were lowered for a season, so that wheat could reach the riverlands. The faith's tithes would be redirected to rebuild the war-shattered septs of the Crownlands, the Stormlands, and the Blackwater towns. A council of small folk, seamstress, cooper, shipwright, dyer, would henceforth advise the hand on the common voice of King's Landing. Davos Seaworth, robed in sea-green wool to mark his new station, took note of each point, quill scratching against parchment as though hurriedly transcribing the surging reverence before them. When Gendry finished, he did not wait for triumphal cheers. He bowed as one bows to a forge that has finally cooled, and stepped back inside the hall. The applause came late, a ragged roar loosed only after the great doors closed. It echoed up the hill, rattled the sept towers, and poured through every crooked alley between Gate of the Gods and the Lion Gate. Women wept behind cupped hands. Bakers tossed yesterday's crusts to urchins. Gold cloaks, binding themselves, cheered for the first time in recent memory, straightened their dented helms, and briefly wondered whether virtue might suit them. Inside the crimson-walled chamber that had once heard the whispers of Lord Varys and the boasts of Littlefinger now hosted a different music. The scraping of carpenters replacing a cracked table leg, the tasteless thud of an axe splitting old furniture for firewood, the chatter of obese ravens flapping in wicker cages above a rookery basket meant to triple in size. A new small council gathered around an oval table of oaken planks that smelled of fresh sap rather than old polish. Davos sat at Gendry's right, parchment already in stacks beside a candle stub. Across from him the High Septon reclined with a cup of willow bark tea, his trembling fingers wrapped around the bowl, like roots clinging to life. Loras Tyrell, still favoring a healing rib, arrived in silken green once gilded with roses, now stripped of sigils, save a modest embroidered thorn on each cup. Sir Roland Storm represented Storm's End, weathered and seasick of court, but burning with the pride of a region long sidelined by dragons and stags alike. No iron throne tarnished the council chamber. That brutal lattice of swords remained shut away in the grand hall, awaiting petitions. Gendry preferred to stand rather than recline upon the barbed seat, and each time he did sit upon it, briefly for custom's sake, he returned with a new cut to remind him of its lessons. Davos cleared his throat. Ships from Braavos lie 3 days off Lies. He tapped a crude map. Sails marked with the Iron Bank's coin. If they sail north to Casterly, Queen Regent Cersei might pledge Lannister gold in exchange for sellsword hosts. The Iron Bank values certainty, said the High Septon, eyelids hooded with fatigue. Show them a realm where debts will be honored, and they shall not gamble on a lioness in retreat. Braavos respect strength, Loras countered, voice soft but words edged. They also respect victories on the field. He tapped the map where the Stormlands met the Crownlands. We have none yet, beyond a duel in the Dragon Pit. Gendry pressed both palms flat on the table. Strength is more than spilling blood. We send envoys to the Iron Bank bearing ledgers of grain and tin, proof that commerce flows again through Blackwater Bay. Davos. Choose a merchant master with an honest tongue. Sir Roland will escort him on Lord Selwyn's swiftest galley. And no. The council dispersed, tasks whirring like wheel cogs. As twilight claimed the sky, Gendry remained, gazing at the candles' slow devouring of wax. In the flicker he saw a vision of Arya again. Always Arya, grinning as she brandished a broomstick like a sword on that long-ago caravan. He wondered where she wandered now. The Vale? The North? A ship across the narrow sea? The realm clung to the notion that names forged destiny, yet she had cast aside every name she owned and still remained formidable as Valyrian steel. That night, he avoided the royal apartments assigned by stewards and slipped instead into the old cramped room the smiths of the Red Keep kept for quick repairs. A solitary anvil squatted near a wall stretched with tools and rusting bridle bits. He stoked the coals, breathing life into banked embers. The heat welcomed him like an old friend. There he shaped horseshoes for the castle stables, folding iron again and again until the world outside, the rumor, the politicking, the creditors, melted into white gold glow. When the hour grew late, he felt a presence at the archway. Arya Stark stepped from the shadows, hair cropped short beneath a hood of undyed wool, the scars of a dozen disguises softened by lamplight. No title preceded her, no escort announced her. She simply watched him strike metal, eyes reflecting sparks. At last she spoke. "You swing lighter than before." He would have laughed if his heart were not trapped behind ribs suddenly as fragile as spun glass. He quenched the shoe, steam rising. "You move quieter than anyone alive." She smiled, quick, reluctant. "Brienne told me at River Run about a bastard king crowned by faith." Her gaze flitted to the iron circlet discarded on a bench. "You're wearing the bloody thing." "It weighs less than I feared," he admitted, shoulders shrugging as though testing unseen armor. "But every day it grows heavier with eyes that expect miracles." Miracles. She turned the word like a coin. "You'll need needle-thin blades of truth, not miracles." Stepping forward, she let a folded parchment slip onto the workbench. "Cersei has hired the Golden Company. 20,000 across the sea. They've marched for pretenders before." "Ow." Gendry paled. "Where did you... Bravos isn't the only city with banks." She cut in. "And the Golden Company will happily serve coin over cause. They sail from Volandaris within the month." He reached across the bench and clasped her forearm. "Join my council." Arya pulled away, shook her head. "I'm not made for council tables. I've things to finish." She tapped the handle of needle beneath her cloak. "But Winterfell owes the last Baratheon championed by the North once. Sansa sits as Lady Regent. Swing your hammer wisely, and she'll send grain and men. Now." He almost asked her to stay anyway, to hammer out the aches of the past beside him, to fight shoulder to shoulder against a future that promised more wounds. But the words felt selfish. Kings could command. Friends must not. He nodded. "Tell Sansa her smith will temper steel for her when she comes." She met his gaze, a flame flickering between them. Unspoken memories of nights on the King's Road, of hot pies and cold nights in the holdfast at Harrenhal, of rowing across black rivers. Then she vanished, as though the forge smoke had conjured her, and now reclaimed the illusion. The next dawn ravens soared north and south carrying scrolls bound in black wax, stamped with a crowned stag and seven-pointed star. One flew to Sunspear, one to the Twins, one to Deepwood Moat. Each contained fewer than 50 words. "The realm bleeds. Stand with the hammer, or suffer the lion's claws. Choose before the first full moon." Cersei Lannister received no parchment. She needed none. She felt the hammer's reverberation with each failed attempt to raise allies. At Casterly Rock she paced the ancestral solar, silk slippers whispering across marble veined like sun-frozen blood. Qyburn shuffled behind her, reading dispatches in a voice devoid of warmth. The Reach had opened grain routes to King's Landing. Dorne had permitted free passage of Stormlander envoys across the Boneway. The Iron Bank requested updated ledgers. "How many men will the Golden Company bring?" Cersei demanded. 20,000, my queen. Elephant cavalry among them, if rumor holds." She poured arbor gold into a chalice, swallowed without tasting. "Elephants rot in Westerosi winter. Yet their tusks still gore," Qyburn replied. "And their sellsword hearts care not for seasons." A servant interrupted with timid gasp. "A raven from Pike." Cersei tore open the scroll. Lord Euron's scrawl sluiced across the parchment. "Storms gather, but the Kraken fears no hammer. Promise me the Queen's hand and the Iron Fleet will ferry your golden elephants. The seas are mine." She crushed the scroll, eyes sharpening like drawn steel. "Summon Euron Greyjoy." Across the ocean Euron already prepared, lash in hand, teaching his crews a new song. One that hailed the Lion Queen and mocked stag and sparrow equally. The Iron Fleet's keels slid through choppy tides, hulls stuffed with ballistae designed to flay scaled beasts, should dragons ever return to these skies. Back at King's Landing, Gendry prepared too, though with fewer boasts. He ordered the city's smithies to triple production. Pikes tipped with star-shaped blades that could hook shields, half-helms layered with riveted plates thin enough for mass issue. He abolished extortionate guild fees, so that orphan apprentices might train and earn coin equal to any highborn page. When the guildmasters balked, he met them over roaring forges, hands black with soot, and asked how iron obeyed a hammer, yet men refused. They relented under the heat of his conviction. One storm-heavy evening, Davos found him asleep on a cot beside the forge. Skin blistered from sparks. The hand placed a wool cloak over him. Needlework poor but heart's ease read, and whispered, "A man may wear himself to slag long before the sword falls." Gendry stirred, smiled faintly. Iron only hardens when tempered. True, Davos conceded. But iron shatters if cooled too swift without quenching oil. The next day, the first common folk council convened in the mud-paved courtyard behind the Septon wall. A dyer named Mela of Sow's Hill spoke of river rats devouring grain stores. A fisherman described silting upriver, choking their nets. Gendry listened, no quill scratching because he trusted memory more than parchment for human misery. He dispatched laborers to dredge the river mouth, quietly funding them with coin stripped from Lannister statuary, melted into ingots. The lion's gold recast into nails for bridges and hinges for barn doors. News of such acts traveled faster than ravens. In the Stormlands, villages once battered by sellswords raised wooden stags at crossroads, simple totems carved by children. At the sight of those carvings, highwaymen opted for safer roads, superstitious dread outweighing hunger's goad. Meanwhile, the Reach plotted subtler gains. Lady Olenna penned letters heavy with sarcasm and flattery in equal measure. While publicly supplying grain, she privately planned marriages. The widowed Lord Garland might wed a Stormlander heiress. A Tyrell cousin could tie knots with House Swan. Every union would wrap the new throne in vines, difficult to hack away. The North, however, debated principle rather than dowry. At Winterfell, Sansa gathered bannermen in the Great Hall, whose rafters still smelled faintly of burning after Ramsay's torches. Lady Mormont pounded a fist on the table, calling the faith's coronation Southern corruption. Lord Glover pointed out that Robert's blood did flow in Gendry's veins. Others feared another Southern campaign would bleed them dry. Sansa listened until voices frayed. Then she opened a small chest and removed needle-thin letters bearing Arya's code, signed only with a sketched direwolf. She read aloud the lines praising Gendry's honesty, his refusal of silks, his nightly toil at the forge. Silence followed like snow on pine needles. "We marched for Robb's crown," Sansa said finally. "We bled for Stannis when he fought the dead. Shall we refuse a king who offers justice rather than tribute?" In the end, they agreed to send wheat, oats, cured goat, and 300 archers under Harold Karstark. They would see if the Smith King's promises rang true when hammered by winter's chill. Autumn deepened. Ravens blackened every rookery, wings a fluttering alphabet of fear and faith. Reports came of Euron's fleet, sighted off Tarth. Sails patched with golden tent designs housing the elephants below deck. In response, Gendry ordered galleys from Driftmark to blockade Blackwater Bay. He summoned the archmaesters of the Guild of Alchemists and quietly secured wildfire enough to sear a fleet, should it breach the narrow sea, a contingency he prayed to never use. One crisp, moonless night, Arya returned again. This time with wind-swept cheeks and a cut above her brow. She found Gendry in the stables fitting new shoes on a chestnut destrier. Without greeting, she pressed a scrap of silk into his hand, a fragment of crimson sewn with golden lion claws. "Cersei's spies infiltrate the Guild of Alchemists," she murmured. "They plan to ignite the vaults beneath the sept during your harvest blessing." Gendry's stomach clenched. The harvest blessing was set to feed half the city with Reach grain. Thousands would cram the plaza. How sure? Arya's eyes hardened. "I watched a man pour wildfire through a cistern near the vault entrance. I followed him to a house bearing the same sigil." She touched the cut above her brow. "He saw me. He sleeps with a slit throat now." Grief warred with gratitude in Gendry's chest. He squeezed her shoulder. You risk too much. I risk what's mine. She shrugged free, unsentimental. And Winterfell's grain won't save ashes. You must cancel the blessing. He shook his head. Cancel, and small folk think rumor rules me. We hold it, but purge the vaults first. They devised a plan. Davos would lead a squad of former smuggler friends through the old storm drains at dusk. Loras would marshal silent teams of faith militant above ground. Arya would infiltrate the alchemist's tower posing as an initiate, her stolen face belonging to a girl recently conscripted from Lys. Time was ash, slowly drifting toward a candle flame. The day arrived clad in gray drizzle. Stalls filled with barley cakes and onion-steeped broth lined the main avenue. Children splashed through puddles chasing toy boats carved from gourd rinds. The High Septon began prayers at the steps, voice steady as the rainfall. Beneath, unseen by most, Davos waded thigh-deep through a fetid channel, torch guttering, men behind him gagging at the stench. A faint green luminescence shimmered atop black water, runoff from wildfire stores. He cursed softly. Above, Arya scaled the tower's interior ladders, each rung slick with condensation. In the upper chamber, she found two pyromancers arguing over slipshod measurements of lime water. Their hoods shrouded them, leaving only mouths visible, thin lips pursed in squabbling precision. Arya crept behind the larger and drove needle through kidney and lung in one practiced thrust. The other turned, eyes bulging. She slashed upward, severing artery. Blood pattered the flagstones like rain on tin. She dragged the bodies aside and opened the lattice shutters to vent the pungent airs. Loras meanwhile moved through the crowd disguised as a sellsword, scanning faces for panic cues. When he spotted a hooded figure whispering to a lantern carrier, he followed at distance. The lantern's flame flickered green. Loras's blood iced. He intercepted with a sudden shove, toppling both into a mule cart. The lantern smashed, spilling not oil but colorless fluid that hissed upon muddy road, glowing sickly where it touched water. The hooded figure shrieked. Loras slammed pommel to temple, sending man to muck. Below, Davos located the stopcock that fed cistern pipes to the vault. With every ounce of aging sailor strength he cranked until bones in his hand popped. Wildfire sluiced backward toward overflow basins, rigged minutes ago by smuggler allies. Stone pits to drown the substance under seawater channeled from the Blackwater. When the basin filled, its lime-lined lips hissed and belched vapor but held. On the steps above the High Septon raised both arms. The Mother's mercy flows where hearts open. 7 doves were released, wings beating the mist. Gendry beside him exhaled for the first time in an hour. That evening, word of the foiled plot spread like sunburst through clouds. Small folk hailed the Smith King not only just, but vigilant. Cersei's whispers of demon worship crumbled against the anvil of public gratitude. In her chambers at Casterly, she hurled a crystal decanter so hard it cracked a lion head column. Wine bled down like metaphor. But Euron's fleet still sailed, and elephants cannot drown in rumor. Gendry met with naval captains on Driftmark, schooling them in hammer-swift strikes. He rode to Storm's End to rally men who still bore bruises from Robert's youthful sparring. He asked Loras to stand marshal of the Crown Lands. The knight accepted with solemn nod, the scar at his chin deepening when he smiled. One lonely dusk Gendry stood on the battlements watching gulls swirl beneath a tangerine sky. Arya joined him silently, hair damp from training. They traded no words for a long while. The gulls' cries, the boom of waves against stone, the distant peal of a forge bell. These filled what might have been awkward space. Finally she said, "Do you sleep at all?" "Enough," he lied, rubbing the half-healed bruises beneath his shirt. "You wear the whole realm on your shoulders. Even dragons couldn't fly carrying that." He turned, features softened by fading sunlight. They carried fire in their bellies instead. Then feed the fire. You can't swing a hammer on an empty stomach. She handed him a cloth bundle, bread and smoked trout wrapped in waxed linen. He accepted, warmth flooding his hands. "You leaving again?" he asked. She nodded toward the darkness beyond the bay. "Someone has to watch the Kraken's coils. I'll ride the coast, see where Euron makes landfall." Take guards. She smirked. Guards slow me down. He reached into a pouch at his belt, produced a token. A simple iron coin with no mint stamp. Just a 7-pointed star punched rough by nail and chisel. For gates that open only to faith, he said, pressing it into her palm. Arya closed fingers around it, eyes shining. Tempest meeting forge. I've never been a big believer. Believe in the man who made it then. A breeze rose, tossing her cloak like raven wings. She slipped the coin into her sleeve. Be ready when the kraken claws. He watched till even her silhouette vanished, swallowed by shadow and salt spray. Already he missed her, like an ache he had grown accustomed to ignoring. Winter's first raven arrived shortly after, fat with snow on its feathers. Maester Willis cracked its seal. House Umber pledged 80 spears. House Manderley promised longships to bolster the royal fleet if supplied with master carpenters to repair docks at White Harbor. The small folk council advised sending grain rather than coin to buy loyalty. Gendry agreed. Preparations accelerated. Smithies churned out axle parts for carts. Spades for earthworks, nails for ramparts. Children volunteered to twist rope from hemp, their laughing contests turning labor into play. Banners bearing the stag and star multiplied across rooftops like moss on damp stone. Songs arose in taverns. The Hammer and the Rose praised alliance with Tyrells. The Bastard won the crown mocked Lannister lineage, with rhymes bawdy enough to curl a Septa's toes. At last a crisp morning brought a horn blast from the ramparts. Black sails on the horizon. Davos squinted through a bronze spyglass. Ironborn, he confirmed. No golden company yet. Euron advanced as vanguard. 200 hulls. Prows carved with crushing tentacles. The red wine fleet answered from the Mander's mouth, green sails gleaming. Between them lay roaring surf, and thousands of drifting mines forged at Gendry's order. Sealed clay pots packed with scorpion barbs and pig fat, buoyed by pitch-coated cork. When iron-borne longships cut through, their keels caught the pots. Blasts of flame and shrapnel sent hulls gaping. The sea itself seemed to erupt in bronze spray. But Euron maneuvered through chaos with lunatic grace. His flagship's silence skimmed like a shark over wreckage, ramming any drifters too slow to turn. Its prow, steel jaws welded open, clamped an arbor galley mid-turn. Boarding axes flashed, Ironborn poured aboard. From atop the castle's tower Gendry felt each scream in his marrow. He handed the spyglass to Davos. Signal wildfire. Davos hesitated. Seawater may carry the flames to our own hulls. Then we sail no hulls until Euron burns out. He lit the beacon on the tower's crown. Down on the quay alchemists darted like ants, trundling wheeled bronze throwers, tubbed dragon mouths aimed seaward. With a signal drum they launched a volley of green fire pots into the air. The jars arced, shattering over silence. Green inferno blossomed against black sails. The kraken banner curled like drying seaweed. Yet Euron only laughed, voice carrying over water like mad hymn. The flames danced upon tar-soaked canvas, but he'd layered sand between planks. The blaze hissed, devouring sailcloth yet sparing hull. Silence plowed on, prow catching a breeze spawned by its own conflagration. Gendry cursed. Prepare the ballistae. 6 giant crossbows on swiveling carriages rolled into position along the mud gate wall. The quarrels, each a small tree trunk tipped with iron harpoons, had been fashioned under his own eye. He manned one, muscled arms cranking back the sinew bowstring. When silence drifted, within 800 feet, he released. The bolt whistled, cleaving air, punching through the charred mainsail to embed in forward mast. Sailors screamed as cable winches on the wall reeled slack taut, jerking the ship sideways. 2 more bolts followed, pinioning stern to another mast. Silence yawed, dead in water. Archers showered the deck with flaming arrows. At last the wildfire found an opening. A barrel of pitch exploded, engulfing Euron's quarterdeck. Even then, the Lord of the Iron Islands emerged on rail, arms akimbo, cloak ablaze, laughing until a quarrel skewered his left shoulder. He toppled into green fire, swallowed by hissing waves. Cheers erupted from the walls. The survivors scrambled, cutting anchor ropes, leaping into rowboats. The Iron Fleet broke formation. Some fled west, others ran aground south of the Blackwater Rush. Tyrell and Redwyne ships herded stragglers like sheep for slaughter. But victory tasted briny with loss. Wreckage littered the bay, burning planks swirling among black corpses. Gendry descended to docks to help haul wounded. Hours later he found Davos sitting amid broken barrels, salt crusting his beard. "One battle," the hand murmured, "and we've drained our wildfire reserves." "The Kraken bleeds," Gendry said, though fatigue weighed down his words. "Yet Cersei's elephants still march from old Volantis, and the Golden Company has not sailed with them. I've crossed at salt pans with borrowed Bravosi cogs." Gendry sank onto a crate, feeling every bruise. "How many days?" 10 at most. "Fewer if the wind favors them." The Smith King stared across the bay where dawn painted wrecks in rose gold. He envisioned carved barbs under elephant hides, brazen sellswords singing of plunder. He thought of small folk councils, northern oats, children carving stag totems, and he thought of the iron circlet's edges digging deeper into his brow. "We meet them on the Trident," he decided, away from city walls packed with mothers. "Stormland's lords will march," Davos assured. "The Reach will send cavalry, though Olenna demands you review marriage pacts." Gendry shook his head. "I'll wed no one for grain. Let deeds forge alliances." Davos smiled ruefully. "In Westeros, marriage is a deed." That night, before leaving, Gendry returned to his forge. He melted down the fragments of Silence's captured prow, steel blackened by wildfire, and folded them into his hammer's head, reforging the weapon yet again. Layer upon layer trapped echoes of clang and roar, shaping a song only metal understands. When finished, he quenched the hammer in seawater mixed with a vial of Sept holy oil. Steam curled like ascending prayers. In the quiet that followed, he closed his eyes and pictured the realm. Farms greening under early frost, a girl with a needle slipping through shadows, a young king on a war-blooded road, reluctant but resolute. He whispered a promise to the seven, but addressed it to every child who had ever watched a parent starve, that he would not fail them. Then he donned mail shirt, buckled freshly shod destrier, and rode under pre-dawn stars toward a river that had decided kings since before the conquest. Behind him, lit windows flickered out one by one, as if the city itself paused to draw breath for the trial yet to come. "Okay." The wind off the narrow sea tasted of iron, the scent of half-sunk warships smoldering far behind. Yet the banners flapping over the war host on the King's Road smelled of hickory smoke and wet canvas instead. Every dawn since the wreck of Silence, Gendry's column had trudged north and east, following the river road that looped toward the Trident like a scar twisting through low hills. Wooden wheels creaked beneath reserve wagons crammed with barley, salt pork, and barrels of cheap Arbor Brown. Smith's forges mounted on Neiman carts clanged in steady rhythm, shoeing pack mules and riveting helm straps, even as the army marched. Children from the Crownlands villages ran alongside the dust clouds shrieking, "Hammer King," until stern Septus guided them back to chores. At the van rode Sir Roland Storm beneath the pale dawn, armor lacquered dull green so the stag's sigil shone the brighter. 20 paces behind him rumbled the harvest wagons of Highgarden. Tyrol gold hammered onto spokes that still smelled of freshly planed oak. Mace had sent only a token escort of chevaliers, but the grain itself marched as living pledge. Each wagon clattered like an oath tallied on an abacus in Lady Olenna's mind back in the Reach. Gendry rode in the first brigade of Stormlanders, the reins of his charcoal destrier threaded loose through thick fingers. The iron circlet had left a shining groove upon his brow. He had lined the inside with felt, but metal insisted on reminders. Beside him paced Sir Davos on a rangy gelding, the hand's new cloak snapping, onion sigil patched at the collar almost as an afterthought. Behind them marched 500 Faith militant, shields freshly whitewashed, 7-pointed stars traced in charcoal over drying paint. Loras Tyrell rode at their head, ribs stiff yet healing. Sunlight gleamed on the shallow dent in his breastplate, where Silence's crossbow bolt had almost found bone days prior. By mid-morning the host reached the moss-draped ruins of an abandoned tollhouse overlooking the blue stretch where the Green Fork veered west. The Trident lay 2 leagues ahead, flanked by low islands of rushes. Davos squinted at the sky where a lone raven circled, then pitched into a dive toward the ruined chimney. It dropped a cylinder. A Stormlander squire retrieved it, saluted, and sprinted to the king. Inside the tube writhed a scrap of parchment scrawled in Aria's angular hand. Golden Company 3 days south of Salt Pans. Foot and elephants equal 20,000. Vanguards fording Haraway to flank. Night attack on ferry holdings likely. Watch River Sisters. A line below bore a smudged direwolf sigil, no larger than a beetle. Gendry exhaled hot through his teeth. So they rush the fords to beat us. They fear giving you time to entrench, Davos murmured, rolling the parchment again. Elephants hate mud. They need the high banks where the ferry keep stands. If they seize that ground, we fight uphill, where the hammer hammers itself. A gust carried stench of fetid water. Reeds hissed like conspirators. Gendry scanned the river's bends. Flat islands braided by shallow channels, glinting like silver knives. He pictured how shield walls would bog, how elephants could churn packed loam to paste. A smith's soul measured terrain like anvil faces. Find the weakness, strike. Roland, he called. The bastard Castellan cantered up, visor lifted. Ride south with 3 wings of light horse. Torch the ferry towers before nightfall. Strip every plank of timber, dump it in the river. If the Sellswords want high ground, let them stand on ash or swim. Roland's grin flashed white. He wheeled away, banner snapping. Tyrell knights followed, green cloaks billowing like banners of spring. Davos frowned, thumb rubbing the scar where finger bones once were. Burning our own crossing is a hard choice. A warhammer breaks its own mold, Gendry said. We use the river as the anvil. He pointed to the marshy flats upriver where bulrushes hid just visible rivulets. Those islands can hold light infantry. We stagger them like studs in the iron. First stag shield walls, then reach pikes behind. When elephants charge, hooves will vanish under the mud. We finish what the muck begins. Nematan? En? He ordered portable forges wheeled forward. Smiths hammering stakes of square iron 4 feet long, tips barbed like fishhooks. The plan: plant them just beneath the waterline at every shallow run the elephants might test. Davos dictated lists. Messengers galloped off. By sundown, thousands of glistening stakes bristled beneath murky shallows, like sea urchins awaiting unsuspecting toes. Night wrapped the camp in damp velvet. Campfires guttered low by command. No songs rose, only the rasp of whetstones on spearheads. In the king's pavilion, a patched storm blue tent smelling of tallow. Gendry crouched by a crude sand table. Tiny stones marked companies. Forks of driftwood stood for river braid. He shifted pieces until his vision firmed. A staggered horseshoe, faith militant on the wings, reach archers at the nape. Stormlander center braced by smith-forged stakes hammered into drear sand beyond the mire. Loras entered, helm carried beneath arm. Rainwater dripped from his mantle onto the sand, pocking Gendry's miniature war. The last ferry tower burns, Loras reported. Golden flames all the way to Harrenhal's horizon. Your bastard brother just lit half the crown lands. A thin smile creased his cheeks. Beautiful, in a terrible way. No brother, Gendry muttered, sweeping damp grit into a new bank. Only allies. Storms make kin of strangers. Loras set down the helm, knuckles whitening around its rim. Sir Roland captured 3 outriders wearing black kraken badges. Euron's stragglers serve as scouts for the Sellswords. Tell Qyburn when you send his regards. Gendry growled, then sighed at his own bile. I'll speak with the prisoners at first light. Sleep if you can. Loras bowed from the neck, the gesture of one knight to another, and left. Gendry eased onto a low cot, but sleep avoided him like quenched steel hissing from tongs. A smith's mind recites, at dim hours, every error ever hammered. He saw again the children cheering as grain wagons rolled, wondered if those same children would freeze when winter's real teeth bit. He pictured Arya creeping alone along some moonlit dike near salt pans, mud sucking at her boots, unseen crossbow strings creaking in blackness. He forced himself to breathe, in like drawing slag from crucible, out as slag poured away. Eventually, the rhythmic hammer of rain on canvas lulled him toward dreams, where ghost fires climbed walls of charcoal stone and a stag of molten iron bellowed. Beneath a full moon, a trumpet shattered dawn. Scouts stumbled in bearing news. Golden Company banners on the southern bank, harp of bitter steel stitched gold on black, elephants knee-deep in reed shallows, test trumpeting under foreign mahouts. Their main column, 5 miles long, snaked up the ridge road, sun glittering off half-plate polished bright as imported pride. At the van rode a tall rider girded in mail and tiger skin cloak. Harry Strickland, Captain General, sworn to place just heir upon the Iron Throne. In this case Cersei's Tommen, though rumor claimed company pagistes bore Lannister lions newly minted. Gendry assembled his war council atop a low spit of firm ground, shaped like a smith's thumb pressed into clay. Davos, Loras, Sir Roland, and Maester Willis stood around a battered trestle table bearing a damp map weighted by the king's hammerhead itself. Our stakes hide here, here and here. Gendry began, fingertip skimming waterlines. Strickland must cross at these shallows or circle 2 days west. He won't delay, their coin bleeds by the hour. Davos, signal the north archers to hold fire until horns sound thrice. Stormlanders, keep shield walls loose. Let mud swallow half the charge before you raise pikes. They clasped wrists in silent pact, then dispersed as the day warmed to a steely glare. Across the mirror of the river, ranks of elephants shuffled, draped in quilted blankets of saffron and scarlet. Atop each howdah twitched crossbowmen. Footmen thronged beneath, pikes glinting like stubble on a titan's jaw. War drums boomed, rolling across water like thunder chasing fever dreams. Just after sun zenith, the Golden Company advanced. Trumpets shrilled exotic scales, unfamiliar to Westerosi ears. Mahouts prodded elephants forward, their massive pads sucking at mud with wet squelches. Behind them, glided ranks of mercenary spears. Giscari veterans, Kuhorik second sons, Dothraki sellswords, who had forsaken Khalazars for gold. 40 yards from the first hidden stake line, an elephant roared, trunk flailing, its foreleg impaled on iron. It reared, howdah tilting, catapulting crossbowmen into murk. Panic rippled down the line. 2 more beasts crashed into submerged spikes, bellowing pain echoed by screams of handlers crushed beneath tipping bulk. Gendry raised the hammer above his head. A crimson feathered arrow launched from behind him. The preset signal. Bugles keened thrice. From arrow loops punched in reed banks, Northmen archers loosed. A cloud of ash-fletched shafts that whistled like sleet. Reach longbowmen on slight rises joined, their heavier draw sending yard-long arrows plunging through gilded mail. Mercenary lines faltered, pikes drooped. Then Stormlander shield walls surged forward with guttural roar. Footing sure on ground weighed by dry straw foundations laid overnight. They met the slipping mercenaries knee-deep, hammers and short axes smashing. Strickland, realizing his van bogged, ordered flank companies to seek higher ground upstream, unaware that Faith militant infantry already occupied those hummocks. Loras Tyrell led the charge down, longsword glimmering. Each blow cut through gilded surcoats like scythe through barley. 7-pointed stars flashed across battered shield faces. Sunlit shards of conviction. Twinned cries of Smith and Star merged to a chant no minstrel had scored before. From the rear of the Golden Company column, fresh ranks attempted to press forward, but refugees bleeding back clogged the banks, elephants floundering sideways. The second wave had little room to form. And at that moment, Gendry committed his reserve. 300 cavalry from the Crownlands, mounts coated in mud to dim the shine of plate. They burst from willow groves behind the sellsword flank, lances leveled, hooves thundering. The charge caught mercenaries between iron and river, Bodies tumbled into water, turned cartwheels on slick silt. Yet the battle's hinge swung still uncertain. On the southern ridge, urine-surviving Kraken raiders dragged up scorpions they had salvaged from half-burnt hulls. Iron bolts hissed overhead, one clipping Maester Willis' shoulder, before skewering a Faith captain. More bolts harried the cavalry's rear, felling mounts. Davos spotted the silhouettes against the sky ridge and cursed salty oaths. He commandeered a battery of Tyrell bowmen, marched them double-time through thicket, and flanked the Krakens. At 20 paces they fired, point-blank into crews struggling to reload. The ridge erupted in steel shrieks and splintered bone. Gendry's hammer found foes amid the central melee. He swung wide arcs, each blow thunder-loud even amid clangor. One elephant, maddened, barreled riderless toward him. He dodged, pivoted, and smashed his hammer into its kneecap. A sickening crack, and the animal collapsed. Trunk trolling mud like severed rope. Smoke of trampled reeds thickened the air, stirring memories of forge soot. He coughed, eyes watering, yet pressed forward. Suddenly a gap yawned, and Harry Strickland himself emerged, astride a tall Volantine courser. Gilded helm bore a single black feather. His eyes, visible through narrow visor, glittered with fury. He spurred straight at the bastard king, couching lance. Gendry hefted the hammer one-handed, waited, iron calm within chaos, and at the lance's reach he sidestepped, swinging upward. The hammer caught the lance midshaft. Wood exploded in splinters. Strickland wrenched reins, drew curved saber in same motion, slashed at Gendry's head. The king ducked, felt wind of steel kiss crown. He planted boot on muddy turf, heaved the hammer overhead, and brought it down upon the courser's withers. Horse collapsed. Strickland catapulted, rolled, sprang to a knee. Saber flashed again, glancing off the king's mail. Slicing leather strap got due. Gendry pivoted, hammer butt hooking Strickland's elbow, disarming him. A mailed fist punched the mercenary across jaw. O&A. Strickland fell, helmet half askew. Nearby a sellsword lunged at Gendry's back. Before weapon struck, a short blade pinned the attacker through larynx. Arya Stark appeared as if materialized from torch smoke. Face smeared in mercenary dust, needles slick crimson. She winked once, then vanished again into surge of men. Gendry hauled Strickland upright, locking forearm about the captain's neck. He roared, "The hammer falls! Yield!" His voice carried above battle din, magnified by echoing riverbanks. Mercenaries hesitated. The Faith's banners advanced. Archers drew but held flights. One by one, battered elephants knelt or collapsed. Trunk calls warped to keening moans. Finally, a Cohoric spear captain flung his weapon into mud. Others followed. Shields dropped, hands raised. The Golden Company, unbroken in a century, bent knee to a king they had come to unseat. A hush pooled over the field, broken only by dragonflies thrumming above stagnant pools. Sun slid behind clouds, leaving a pewter gleam on water thick with driftwood and bodies. Gendry released Strickland, signaled healers forward. He scanned for area but saw only retreating shapes of prisoners herded toward makeshift pens. By dusk, triage tents billowed like ghostly blossoms across the north bank. Fires burned for warmth, not celebration. Gendry washed gore from arms in cold eddy current, scrubbing until veins glowed. He pulled on a fresh linen shirt, the collar stiff with sun-dried soap. Loras arrived, sling binding his bicep yet grin bright beneath soot. "A victory still costs," the Tyrell knight said, glancing at pyres atop the far bank. "Victories are debts," Gendry replied. He stared across water at the charred skeleton of an elephant half submerged, like a sunken war galley. "We pay in coin or conscience." He lifted eyes to the first evening star peeking through ragged cloud. "Tonight, we bury them proper, friend and foe. Then we march to King's Landing. The Queen will strike again." End. Cersei Lannister stood on a marble balcony of Casterly Rock, sea spray flecking her fur collar, Qyburn hovering behind like a vulture disguised as man. Ravens had brought twin horrors. Strickland defeated, Euron missing presumed cooked. Elephants drowned. Kraken banners en route. Worse, rumors hissed that the bastard king had spared prisoners. Fed them barley broth. Treated wounds. Mercy. She sneered, could turn foes into devotees. She flung a goblet into the wind, watched silver flecks scatter down the cliff. If the world loves a blacksmith, let them forge crown of tin. She spat. We will rule the ashes. Qyburn's lips twitched. Our wildfire stores at King's Landing remain under guard, he murmured. But I've perfected another art. He lifted a silk cloth from a tray, revealing a vial of amber fluid, thick as treacle. Extract of Manticore. A single drop in wine. Cersei waved him silent. Wine already fails me. She turned back to surf, eyes narrowing where duskline met foam. I want storms, Qyburn. I want every port shut, every harvest rot, every prayer falter. She pivoted, fingers digging into his sleeve. Can you command plague? He blinked. Plagues obey no man, though vials can carry pestilence. Then bottle the stranger's breath. She hissed. Send it to the bastard's camp while they crow of mercy. We'll see how faith shields flesh from fever. Qyburn bowed, mind already whirring with rats and cages. South of the Trident, Gendry's army encamped 10 miles beyond the field to escape stench. Arya found him at Central Fire, speaking with Davos over casualty scrolls. She slid onto a log, cradling mug of acorn coffee. Lost track of your shadows, Gendry quipped. She shrugged. They weren't my shadows to lose. For the first time since returning, she looked weary. The lines at her eyes deeper. The curve of her spine wilting. Found Harry Strickland's pachist wagons. Empty? Not exactly. She tossed a leather purse onto the table. It clinked, dull brass. Lannister lions stamped last month. Plenty more in crates. Your smiths can forge nails, your quartermasters buy oats. Davos raised a brow. War paid by lion's gold. Poetic. Gendry pursed lips. We'll melt it into plowshares after the next harvest. Arya stared into flames. Golden Company won't fight again this winter, but Cersei's spite won't chill. She told them of coded letters found on Strickland, a cipher referencing Myrish cell sales still at sea, a hint of braziers kindled on Dragonstone by agents unknown. She'll try to cut supply lines, Arya finished. Starve the capital while you're away. Gendry rubbed eyes gritty with smoke. Then we don't stay away. At first light we march south. Tyrell grain convoys travel with us. Leave garrisons at every crossroad. If the queen wants to siege her own city, she'll find her walls already filled. Mend. Davos grunted approval. And the prisoners? Perilled, escorted to salt pans, Gendry said. They'll rebuild docks they burned. Call it penance. Arya studied him, the dance of fire mapping planes of his face. You keep choosing the hard road. I was born on it, he answered. The march back to King's Landing was slower. Carts laden with wounded barrels of stinking hides, sacks of captured Myrish chain shirts soon to be reforged. Yet each village they passed poured loaves and onion pies into wagons, farmers waving hoe handles like lances. Somewhere behind hedgerows, girls plucked balalaikas, singing new verses praising Hammer's mercy. At Maidenpool, Lady Maya Stone awaited, with a dozen river lords, newly risen from Harrenhal's ashes. They pledged oaths over a weather-worn sept altar, the highborn kneeling beside muddy-booted archers. Gendry accepted, then set them to rehearse bucket brigades. Walls may burn when lions cornered. On the 12th evening clouds congealed, thick gray batter cloaking stars. Lightning stitched horizon, thunder rattled bones. Rain hammered tents, but blacksmiths love storms. They remind anvil hearts what forging feels like. Gendry slept deep for first time in weeks. He woke to coughs echoing across camp. Not the usual phlegm of damp nights. This rasp raised hackles. Maester Willis rushed from infirmary, eyes ringed purple. Fever, he croaked. High. Came overnight. 30 men already shaking. Gendry's pulse hammered. Water. From upstream barrels. The maester swallowed. might be tainted. Remembering Qyburn's words leaked from captured krakens, rumor of poisoned shipments delivered by crow cages at night. Gendry ordered all barrels smashed, new wells dug. Arya tracked footprints to a dead courier near the supply trench. Skin mottled black, tongue swollen. A punctured vial still clutched in gloved hand. She burned the body with wildfire borrowed from siege wagons. Over next 2 days, fever spread but slowed under Willis' regimen of pine needle poultices and willow bark broth. Still, 60 died, wrapped in linen then buried with coins hammered from molten Lannister gold. Gendry's command so each dead man might buy rest from stranger's toll collector. When the host finally topped the ridge overlooking King's Landing, autumn sun cast Red Keep's pink stones in bruised light. Smoke vented from chimneys, but no banners hung from ramparts. The city looked half asleep, uncertain whether to wake for dawn or night. At the mud gate, a cluster of gold cloaks waited with white flags. Their captain bowed deep as Gendry approached. My king," the man stammered, sweat beading. The Queen Regent fled 2 nights past. Took King Tommen west under heavy guard. Claimed you marched to murder her boy. Gendry's jaw tightened. How many followed? Some red cloaks of the rock, but gold cloaks remain. The city is yours, sire. Davos exhaled relief. She means to raise Westerlands. She'll bleed herself into dust before bending knee. Or burn half a continent, Arya muttered. Within the Red Keep, spiderwebs draped halls once perfumed by Cersei's lilies. Servants scurried like freed mice, dusting furniture stripped of gilded lions. Gendry convened his council in the throne room beneath the Iron Throne's twisted grin. "We cannot chase ghosts," Davos began. "Winter rides swift from the north. Roads will soon freeze." Gendry ascended the dais stairs, eyes on blade edges glimmering in torchlight. He stopped before the throne without sitting. "Cersei stole a child, not a crown. Westeros will not suffer another endless war. Send ravens to River Run, to the Twins, to the Crag. Offer amnesty for any lord who delivers her safe to trial by the faith. Crimes answered with justice, not swords." Maester Willis dipped quill. "And if they refuse, then winter will judge," Gendry said. Over the weeks that followed, King's Landing transformed from fearful shell to busy forge. Smith's recast captured Myrish mail into plowshares, spearheads, cauldron hooks. Grain stores filled, not from tithes but trade. Reach caravans rolled daily across the Roserad, escorted by Tyrell riders whose roses now intertwined with 7-pointed stars. The Smallfolk Council claimed a ruined merchant's guild hall. They hung no sigils, only chalkless board where grievances were chalked at dawn and crossed off at dusk, evidence that someone listened. The High Septon's health faded, age wilting what time had spared. On the first full snow, he summoned Gendry to a candlelit cell in the crypt. Under Baelor's navy, the old man lay beneath blankets smelling of myrrh. "Your reign is young," he whispered, parchment voice brittle. "Yet winter's bite sharpens hearts. Remember, faith without bread is a sermon to empty stomachs. Steel without mercy is tyranny." He pressed a cracked palm to Gendry's wrist. "Forge them together." He died that night. The city bells tolled, but not with dread. Crowds gathered to watch coffin borne on carpenters' shoulders through streets hushed but hopeful. When they buried him at dawn, 7 doves burst upward, wings snow-white against gray sky. Some said it was omen. Others, but simple pigeons startled by drums. Meaning, Gendry mused, is a hammer small minds wield. Truth lies in the steel it shapes. With Septon's passing, the faith convened to elect successor. Rumor placed Loras in contention. Unlikely, yet the thought amused Gendry. He left them to their wrangling. King's metal not in prayers. Winter settled, weeks folding to months like pages curling in fire. Snow dusted Blackwater rooftops. Children who once starved now hurled snowballs made of flour dust stolen from bakery barrels. Northmen patrols drilled with southern recruits. Tyrell engineers strengthened dikes dotting the floodplain. Arya came and went, sometimes gone for moons, returning with whispers of new conspiracies snuffed before sparks caught. Each time she left, Gendry pressed token of hammered iron, moon, wolf, star, into her palm. Each time she left it behind on his table, save the first. Cersei, meanwhile, wove bitterness into banners. In Lannisport, she called banners to shield rightful King Tommen. Yet letters returned slow. Famine nipped coastal orchards after storms wrecked grain flotillas she had counted upon. Westerland's lords muttered that the cost of loyalty outweighed the price of peace. Some sent sons to King's Landing as squires, hedging bets with living coin. On the eve of the new year, ravens from Old Town bore tidings. Maester Samwell Tarly, once steward of Night's Watch, confirmed White Walkers shattered, Stannis pyres having burned true north. Yet a different storm rumbled. The Iron Bank of Braavos recognized Gendry Baratheon's rule in exchange for modest repayment schedule. Credit lines reopened, coin flowed. The Hammer King stood atop Maegor's holdfast parapet one dawn. Snowflakes swirling around crown of plain iron. He watched sunrise spark on the statue of Baelor across rooftops, and wondered if any king before him had ever felt such quiet beneath the breastplate. A silence not of swords unsheathed, but of possibilities unspooling. Below, in the yard, children of court servants fenced with wooden swords. Each wore mix-matched tabards, stag and star, rose and star, direwolf hand-sewn. One taller boy lunged, shouting, "For the hammer!" Another countered, "For the wolf!" Their laughter stitched the cold air like bells. Gendry smiled, though worry etched brow lines deeper than Crown Groove. Cersei still free, dragons rumored in east, Iron Islands restless. Yet for this breath, the realm drew air without choking on smoke. Behind him, footsteps crunched. Arya appeared, snow dusting her cloak. She offered a folded note. From River Run. Jaime Lannister captured while attempting to cross Trident. Gendry's pulse steadied. He flicked seal. A trout entangling a golden lion. Lady Brienne of Tarth's signature scrawled across bottom, requesting orders. He gazed toward rising sun. Summon a tribunal in the Septi. Let the lion answer to faith. Arya arched brow. Mercy again? Justice wears many faces, he said. She smirked. Some sharper than others. She tucked hands in sleeves. Brienne asks if she might serve the king. Tell her the 7 welcome knights who keep vows. He turned to her fully. And you? Will you stay this time? Her eyes reflected the sunrise gold. Until the next shadow needs chasing. He nodded. Then we forge peace until steel rings again. He looked over the frost-white city. One blow at a time. And so the anvil of Westeros cooled beneath winter skies, the hammer raised yet resting a while. Wounds knitted, grain stores swelled, oaths rewoven. Whether the respite would hold, when spring thawed dragon dreams and lion grudges only the gods could whisper. But for now, the bastard crowned by faith ruled not by fear nor fire, but by the steady rhythm of a smith who knew that true strength lies not merely in the hardest strike, but in the patience to temper steel until it will not shatter, no matter how cold the season or hot the forge of war to come. Kay. Snowmelt dripped from the gargoyle eaves of the great Septi, thin rivulets tinking like chimes upon slate gutters, as inside the cavernous nave every pillar and pew strained beneath the press of lords, merchants and barefoot sparrows eager to glimpse the first royal tribunal of the new reign. The candles crowning the chandeliers burned low and smokeless in late winter air, their glow mingling with pale sunbeams that spilled through rose-glass windows to paint prismatic halos over the stone floor. Beneath that colored haze, Jaime Lannister stood alone upon an oaken dais, ringed by faith militant spearmen, whose embossed stars flashed whenever the candles guttered. His golden hair, once lion-bright, had dulled at the roots to the flaxen of unpolished straw. A fortnight in Riverrun's gale had left his cheeks hollow and his crimson cloak stained with journey mud. Yet Jaime carried himself with a swordsman's carriage still, chin lifted, shoulders squared despite the single iron shackle that ran from his left wrist to a ring in the platform's rail. His right sleeve hung empty, folded and pinned where the false golden hand had been stripped at capture. When the galleries hissed at him, "Murderer, Kingslayer," he met their stares with eyes that seemed only half interested in his own fate. Gendry Baratheon stepped from the holy alcove beyond the altar, hammer haft in hand, but pointed earthward, crown of plain iron sitting low on damp curls. To his right strode Sir Davos, face lined with the worry of sleepless cartloads of petitions. To his left paced Arya Stark, clad in boiled leather, no sigils, her expression a weathered mask. Behind them, Maester Willis carried a roll of vellum indictments. The High Council benches, freshly hewn from cedar felled in the Kingswood, creaked beneath the weight of Lady Olenna's entourage, Lord Tarly's stern shoulders, and a scattering of riverlords who had ridden south to witness justice. The High Septon's dais had been draped in mourning cloth since the old shepherd's passing. Today, an interim beadle read the litany in rustling voice. "Sir Jaime Lannister, sworn brother of the late Kingsguard, you stand accused of treason against the realm, murder of King Aerys II, oath-breaking to your sworn order, and subsequent offenses of war upon the Riverlands, without royal writ." "How do you answer?" Jaime's smile curved faint, ironic. "Some things I did, some I did not. Kings die, oaths bend, wars bloom. Which crime concerns you most, your grace?" A murmur coursed through the nave. Nobles leaned to whisper. Small folk craned. Gendry's jaw flexed, but he inclined his head fractionally toward Arya. She spoke instead, voice low yet sharp enough to ring off marble. "Treason concerns us. Oath-breaking concerns us. But above all, the realm sickness fed by unpunished power concerns us. Do you deny striking your cousin Alton in a cell to escape River Run? Do you deny leading raids that burned Hayford millers alive?" "I've?" Jaime's gaze flickered. "I deny nothing that saved a life dearer to me than any miller's oats." "Cersei's life," Arya said. "And would you butcher 10,000 for her heart?" Jaime's shackled wrist lifted, chain clinking. "I would butcher fate itself," he said quietly. And for a heartbeat the nave stilled, for there was no bravado in the words, only exhaustion. Gendry stepped forward, hammer butt hitting floor with hollow boom. "The faith will weigh oaths," he said, voice carrying. "But the crown weighs consequence. Sir Jaime, you will stand trial before 7 judges. 3 of the faith, 3 of the crown, and 1 chosen by you, if that champion will swear to peace." He turned to the galleries. "This is no spectacle of blood. The new realm will judge with daylight, not wildfire." A roar of mixed approval and complaint surged. Some had longed to see the Kingslayer's head roll, others trusted in the father's balance. Jaime dipped head. "Then I choose Brienne of Tarth as my pillar of mercy. She alone of this hall still believes a knight's vows may bind shattered steel." "Then so," whispers shot like thrown daggers. Oathbreaker, naming the most dutiful knight in Westeros as his advocate. Davos exchanged a glance with Gendry but nodded. Brienne had escorted Jaime south herself, under stark condition that he receive fair hearing. The stage was set. 3 Septons, 3 royal justiciars, and Brienne, a living blade honed by honor. The trial would wait a moon's turn to allow witnesses from half the realm to arrive, but already the city frothed. Some taverns offered bitter, lion's ale, served in chipped golden cups. Others sold sugared cakes, shaped as gauntleted stumps. Children giggling while biting into cherry-red jam. Street preachers harangued corners. No mercy for oathbreakers, while a quieter order of monks quoted scripture about atonement. King's Landing, ever hungry for carnival, had not feasted on intrigue since Joffrey's death, and the appetite returned with vengeance. Yet, Gendry refused to let the city drown in spectacle. 4 mornings after the arraignment, he summoned the Smallfolk Council beneath the half-built roof of their guild hall. The floor still lacked rushes and drafts whistled through scaffold gaps, but the dyer Mela, the cobbler Crispin, the fishwife Hara, and 7 others sat in a neat crescent, ledgers on knees. Crispin spoke first. twisting all scarred hands. Your Grace, the North Dock's slipways bow under weight of rebuilt hulls. We need seasoned pine from Crackclaw Point, but the smugglers hoard it after the fever scare. Mela added, and barley prices spike again. Reach granaries empty quicker than wagons arrive. Nenderentero. Gendry crouched by the rough drafting table, quill poised. We'll fund a new sled route across Roserad bypassing flooded fords. Davos will requisition Tyrell wagons. For the pine issue letters of salvage bounty. Any fisher who drags Stormfall trunks gets silver pennies. Nails we can spare. He gestured to the smith foreman who'd followed him. Put the idle apprentices to forging extra fish hooks after hours. Payment in loaves from Royal Bakery. They moved to sewer repairs, to orphanage funding, to the coming planting season. By the time council ended, sunlight slanted through rafters onto a floor. Strewn not with straw but parchment orders. The small folk left hearts lighter. Gendry remained behind, shoulders sagging at dawn's first stiff ache. Arya watched from doorway. You build cities like you build swords, she said, stepping in, boots crunching sawdust, layer by layer. Soft iron then quench, he muttered, wiping ink from thumb. But some days feel like pouring sand down a cracked mold. She lifted a broken beam fragment, studied grain. Wood splits where knots hide. You're not wrong to mend knots first. Nenderu. He met her gaze, something unspoken sparking. But a runner arrived panting. Ravens from Winterfell. Urgent. Sansa wrote that wildling scouts had spotted raiding parties wearing ironborn sigils along the stony shore, harrying fisher villages, seeking refuge caves to avoid crown fleets. Worse, the scouts claimed banners of Red Lion rampant among them. Cersei's new allies. Euron crawls back like a drowned eel, Arya snarled. Or a spear point, Davos muttered, reading over shoulder. He wants us north while Cersei raises Westlander levies south. Gendry paced. We can't split armies, but we can split torches. He spun to Arya. Tell Sansa I'll dispatch 3 longships with wildfire charges. They'll hunt raiders along the coast, but only after snows thaw enough for sail. Until then, Starks hold the north as they always have. He paused. And write to Prince Doran, ask for sandship outriders to watch western passages. If lions move, I want word before hoofprints melt. Messages flew. Nights rode. Midwinter thaw seeped into cracks, turning streets to slush but lifting spirits. Almond blossoms budded in gardens once trampled by sparrow riots. Small folk festivals returned with puppet shows lampooning dead kings and living heroes. In one square, a wooden Gendry puppet wielded a mallet, flattening a papier-mâché lion, while a tiny direwolf cheered. Gendry happened upon it by accident during evening patrol. He laughed until tears stung eyes, then paid the puppeteer double his night's coin. But shadows lengthen, even when festivals flourish. Plague symptoms flared again in a dockside quarter. Qyburn's agents had smuggled potion vials, disguised as Lyseni perfumes. Maester Willis identified the tainted resin, but 24 died before quarantine took. Wails haunted the night. Gendry walked those streets himself, delivering bread and tin cups of Dalewood tea until dawn dulled the grief. During one such vigil, Arya emerged from an alley, ghost quiet. Cersei's rats crawl faster than our brooms, she whispered. He noticed fresh soot on her neck. She'd burned another smuggler's boat at anchor. Their eyes met under lantern glow. An unspoken question hung, perhaps about endings, perhaps about beginnings, and remained unanswered. As the siege of Hearts wore on, the date of Jaime's tribunal neared. Visitors flooded inns. War veterans from the Trident who still bore arrow wounds from the Mad King's pyres. Tyrell cousins eager for gossip. Even brother Raymond Derry clutching parchments of first-hand witness. The faith militant patrolled day and night, star-studded breastplates catching torchlight like constellations turned earthly. On the eve of hearing, Brienne of Tarth arrived from the encampment outside the city wall, great horse snorting. She strode into the great sept at midnight, candle in hand, to kneel before the altar and pray. Some said for Jaime's soul, others for the realms. Gendry found her there, silent as carved marble. He sat on steps below. He murdered his king, he said quietly. Yet he may have saved half the city from wildfire. Brienne kept gaze on the Seven's idols. He was a boy then, cornered between oaths. He is a man now, cornered between love and regret. Will you plead mercy? Gendry asked. I will plead truth, she answered. Mercy you must forge. Dawn bled pearl over frost-white roofs. Bells tolled prime. The Septi's doors opened. Trial day. All King's Landing held breath. River barges docked early. Market stalls shuttered. Only birds dared chatter. Inside, the gallery seats overflowed. Even the rafters saw acolytes perched among wooden beams like solemn owls. At the dais, 7 chairs waited, 3 carved with burning candles to signify the faith, 3 plain cedar for crowned justiciars, and a 7th high-back seat for Brienne, who took her place clad in sapphire blue plate unmarred by sigils. The prosecution began with Septon Colwyn reciting oaths, each vow Jaime had sworn to protect Eris, then broken by regicide. Witness after witness offered testament. An elderly stable boy who'd seen the Mad King's body sprawled beneath the throne. A grizzled guardsman describing Lannister's sack of river-run farmsteads. Every account weighed like slag on scales. When Brienne's turn came, she stood tall. She spoke of Renly's murder. How shadow magic twisted loyalties. How she hunted for the truth. She told of Jaime's confession in Bathhouse of Harrenhal. How he'd saved King's Landing from caches of wildfire Ares, meant to ignite. She raised her visor, and tears glimmered along jaw of steel. Tell me, small folk. She said, voice carrying beyond helmets and velvet collars. Eye of fire raged through this holy place. Would you damn the man who slit a torchbearer's throat to save you? Silence. She pivoted to the Septons. Tell me, father, if an oath becomes a noose about a child's neck, must a knight tighten it or cut it? Her words drifted upward like incense, lingering dye. Even Septon Colwyn blinked twice behind crystal spectacles. The justiciars withdrew to deliberate. Hours passed. Benches stiffened bones. Candles wept wax pillars. Gendry remained in transept, thumb worrying hammer pommel. He weighed outcomes. Death would appease many. Absolution would enrage others. What choice then, tempered steel rather than snapped it? Finally, the judges emerged. The senior justiciar spoke. Sir Jaime Lannister, by blade and by mercy alike, the realm judges you guilty of oath-breaking yet absolved of treason for saving innocents from wildfire. Your punishment shall be exile from King's Landing until the wall stands repaired. There you will serve 5 years among the masons rebuilding its towers, forsaking claim to lands or castles. Refuse, and forfeiture of life will replace it. Gasps echoed like small explosions. Exile to the wall. Service, not death. Some cheered, others cursed. Jaime bowed his head, relief and dread mingling in hawkish features. Brienne closed eyes, shoulders collapsing with gratitude. Gendry exhaled slowly. The hammer's weight felt lighter. Though sentence satisfied few extremes, it quieted many. Jaime left under guard northward 2 dawns later. Brienne rode with him to Queen's Crown before turning back. Tales said they parted beneath a stand of icicles shaped like swords. She returned to pledge her sword to the crown. He vanished into snows, golden hair soon hidden beneath black wool. The kingdom breathed again. Spring tiptoed across fields, coaxing crocus petals through filigree frost. Barley seedlings sprouted along rose-arrayed farms. Dorn shipped amphorae of olive oil and citrus. Sailors joked the Hammer King commanded even trees to fruit. But on a clear green day, the peace cracked. A raven from Old Town bore a seal of Valyrian steel. Archmaester Valar had died, found blue-lipped beside shattered vial. In his stead the conclave elected Archmaester Glendon, a scholar rumored friendly to Lannister Gold. His first edict: maesters would no longer supply King's Landing with glass candles for rapid message. The capital must rely upon slower riders. Davos recognized the strategic choke. Arya fumed about manufactured ignorance. Gendry slammed fist to table. Old Town began to choose sides. Word arrived of Cersei establishing a rival court in Ashmark, styling Tommen true king under the Lion banner. She dispatched envoys to Iron Islands, luring them with promises of pillage rights if they raided Tyrell grain ships. Meanwhile, Euron, missing but not drowned, spread whispers of a hellhorn able to fell walls with sound. Fear coiled again. Gendry responded not with armies but with roads. He ordered extension of King's Road spurs into Westerland's foothills, bringing trade to villages starved by Lannister levies. He paid miners double for iron if they wore no sigil cloak. He offered pardons to sellswords who swore to build instead of burn. Slowly, coin lines redrew allegiance lines. At summer's cusp, a delegation of Western peasants arrived unarmed, pulling wagons of unrefined ore as tribute to the hammer who shapes, not shatters. Gendry met them outside Lion Gate, accepted with calloused handshake. When asked what banner they might fly now, he handed them bolts of blank linen. "Choose the colors of your own hearts," he said. "A king who fears colors is no king at all." The crowd cheered. Somewhere far to the west, a golden lion banner drooped in salt breeze. Still, war brewed like thunderheads. Scouts reported trebuchets tested in craggy valleys, black powder shipments stolen from Lys. Maester Willis warned of sickness in port cities, scarlet pox on merchant galleys. Qyburn's plague jars may be spreading south on vulture wings. One humid night, Gendry sat alone atop the ramparts, hammer across lap, staring north where stars faded beyond city haze. Footsteps padded. Arya emerged, hair sweat dark, fresh from training. "Storm's quiet," she said. "Only before lightning." She joined him on battlement edge, legs dangling. "I ride again tomorrow." Scouts along the Mander whisper of sellswords offering sword to highest bidder. "Lions' purses grow." He turned. "When you go, keep token." He pressed something into her palm. New coin hammered from captured Myrish bronze. One side a stag, the other a wolf. This time she pocketed it with barely a glance. "Come back," he said. She nodded once. "If roads stay open." She slid down the ladder, melding with torch shadows. Weeks passed. Letters sparse. Storms buffeted coasts. Grain ships delayed. Gendry visited foundries nightly, forging chain links of black steel for a new harbor boom. Protection against Ironborn. He hammered until sparks branded freckles on arms. Sweat dripped into eyes. He saw glimpses of Robert's broad grin in each flash. Then his mother's weary silhouette. Faces he'd never truly known, haunting flicker. One night, a scout burst into forge. Dorne outriders captured a raven bound for Ashmark. Message sealed with bloody lion. Inside, orders to hire faceless assassins. Target, King Gendry Baratheon. Price, 2 chests of Lannister gold. Gendry wiped soot, jaw set. Davos urged doubling guard. Loras strengthened night patrol. Yet Gendry remembered Arya once belonged to that nameless order. Faceless shapes slip even triple walls. He convened council. "An assassin strikes from shadow. We light every alley," he said. Lanterns hung from doorposts, curfews set. But he added, "And we break the purse." He commanded Treasury to mint blanket coin reward for any tip leading to capture of poison mongers, paid in food not gold, ensuring small folk interest. Days later, a fisherman's child reported strange sailors renting attic near Mudgate. Baith militias raided, found 3 Braavosi men, stringing wire garrots. They fought, killed 2 guards before captured. Under questioning, they revealed nothing, tongues already cut. Execution would yield no secrets. Gendry decreed, life sentence rowing plague corpses downriver. Fate worse than quick death. Meanwhile, Arya returned with news. Sellsword army in Western Hills approaching 2,000, banner of roaring lion and kraken entwined. Ziga engines rolling. She bore a cut along ribs, stitched haphazard. Gendry's eyes darkened. Maester Willis treated her as Gendry and Davos planned. War comes whether we open gates or not, Davos said. Gendry nodded. Then we meet it beyond farmers' fields. He ordered levies drawn from Storm's End, Sumashal, Toth. Tyrell riders swore again. Dornish spears moved through Prince's Pass. Northmen marched bearing shaggy banners. But before host set forth, ravens from Old Town arrived with parchment, smelling of apple ink. Archmaester Glendon, perhaps fearing Lannister overreach, petitioned Gendry himself. We accept your invitation to send conclave observers of plague hubs. Let knowledge walk unshackled. He'd bent under weight of popular trade. King's Landing's stability now served maesters' seats of learning. Gendry smiled. A small victory without blood. He met Arya on Tower Walkway, overlooking city glitterlit, under waxing moon. Lions gather, he said. But she gazed beyond parapet where street lanterns formed constellations. People in windows. She murmured, That's what you fight for. And you? Names? She looked at him. Some to strike off lists. Some to keep. He dared brush knuckles across her scarred hand. Sparks, gentler than forge, glinted. No words layered the moment. They watched torches flicker in silence. Dawn following saw banners assemble outside Mud Gate. The army stretched east and west, a river of spears and rose-green pennons, storm-black cloaks star-studded, dire wolf standards rippling alongside. Gendry rode before them, hammer raised. We march not to conquer, but to free hearts chained by fear, he called, voice echoing across armor plates. We break the wheel not by crushing spokes, but by mending them so they turn for all. Cheer after cheer rolled like thunder. They marched. As they reached rolling foothills near Castamir's ruins, dust clouds signaled enemy host. Red and gold mixing with black krakens, remnants of Golden Company now under lion banners, ironborn reavers screaming salt chants. War lines formed beneath anvil-shaped outcrop locals, called widows, rock dade. Gendry surveyed ground. Narrow vale, shale ridges, dry gully through center. He assigned Northmen archers to slopes, Tyrell cavalry on flanks, Dornish sand skirmishers to creep gully with poison arrows. Stormlander infantry anchored center. Shields interlocked. Longhorns moaned, enemy advanced. Ziga towers creaked forward, but bogged on loose shale purposely scattered by scouts overnight. Ironborn surged left with axes, met sand spears. Kraken ranks bled. In center, lion infantry locked with stag shields. Clangor shuddered hillsides. Gendry plunged hammer first where lines threatened, each blow dropping man and denting earth. Through chaos he glimpsed Cersei herself atop Palfrey on rear ridge. Circlet of rubies ringed by crimson hood. Beside her flew banner with heart carved of wildfire symbol. Threat of last resort. Ziga captains loaded black powder barrels onto catapults, aimed at valley floor. Arya, disguised among sand skirmishers, noticed. She signaled horns. 3 chimes downward pitch. Gendry heard. Spurred mount, charged ridge path alone, while Loras led cavalry diversion. Cersei's personal guard closed formation, but hammer smashed through. Gendry dismounted, met Sir Adam Marbrand blade to hammer. Sparks lit. Damned eye. Adam's sword beat down. Hammer haft splintered but held. Gendry pivoted, head butted, drove hammer spike under gorget. Marbrand slumped. Cersei backed toward catapult lever. This throne was mine before you crawled from Smith's mud. She hissed, eyes wildfire bright. Thrones are for those who build seats for others, he said. Voice low. She yanked lever. Catapult arm flung barrel. Aim askew by Loras's arrows striking winch rope, sending it arcing short onto Kraken lion lines. Barrel burst, green flame consuming ranks, panic ripping formation. Cersei screamed fury, clawed jeweled dagger, lunged. Gendry knocked blade aside. Seized her wrist. For Tommen, he murmured. Sadness flicker. He bound her hands with broken cuirass strap. Arya appeared, blades dripping, to guard prisoner. Seeing Queen captured, enemy morale shattered. Lannister bannermen cast standards. Ironborn fled slope, to be cut down by Tyrell horse. By sunset, battlefield silent but for crows. Fires quenched, wounded tended. Cersei sat bound beneath makeshift awning, eyes hollow now void of venom. Tommen not with her. Spirited away days before. She refused to speak. Gendry surveyed carnage, weariness coiling deep. Davos approached. Victory won, he said, voice barely above whisper. Victory bought. Gendry's gaze drifted to pyre lines. Pay the price. Bury lion and stag together. War ends here. Within a week, host returned triumphant, dragging shattered siege engines converted to lumber for orphan housing. Cersei paraded through streets. No jeers commanded, only solemn stares. She faced tribunal, found guilty of high treason and murder by plague. Sentence: life at Silent Sisters Convent, vow of silence. Tommen, discovered under guard at Sarsfield, was returned. Gendry knelt to boy, offered crown choice. Remain prince under stewardship, or live as ward at Old Town. Tommen chose the latter, tired of thrones. Peace treaties signed. Lannister lords swore vassalage. Ironborn paid reparation in timber for harbor booms. Golden Company survivors settled as farmsteads in Riverlands. Years unfolded. Roads paved, libraries built, plague study halls erected with maester guidance. The faith elected new High Septon known for barefoot walks among fisherfolk. Festivals thrived. Bards wrote of the Hammer King who brought spring steel. On Midsummer Eve, atop Green Hill beyond Rosa Road, a small ceremony took place. Gendry Baratheon wed Arya, stark beneath a simple arch of willow boughs, and seven-pointed star forged from sword shards. The bride wore riding leathers, hair unbraided. The groom wore forge-scorched cloak. Witnesses were Davos, Sansa, Brienne, and a dozen orphans bearing wildflowers. No dragons roared, no bells tolled save gentle wind through grass. But vows spoken rang truer than any bronze chime. Afterward, Arya slipped bronze coin, the stag-wolf token, onto thin chain around his neck. Names I keep, she whispered. And I temper, he answered, pressing her hand. They rode down the hill to city glowing lantern gold, where bakers handed out sugared stag-wolf biscuits to cheering children. Fireworks, courtesy of Tyrell alchemists, painted sky in green comets and silver direwolves, chasing bronze hammers across velvet night. Far north, ravens perched on newly repaired wall battlements, croaking at falling snow. A one-handed mason looked up, golden hair tousled, and smiled at explosion of colors faint on southern horizon. In Old Town, archmaesters lit glass candles again, curious to record an age of mended oaths rather than shattered ones. In Dorne, princes toasted spiced wine. In Essos, sellswords muttered that West lived up to songs after all. And in the forge behind the Great Sept, where it had begun, Gendry returned often. He shaped plowshares, lucky horseshoes, children's toy swords. Some nights, Arya joined, testing balance of new blades with dancer's ease. Sparks flew, laughter mingled. And though outside politics still shifted like molten metal, within those firelit walls, the realm found its true crown. The steady rhythm of hammer shaping hope upon an anvil of hard-won peace.